fellow Americans.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, there's 4 groups out there and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You have indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compelled. Well, okay, compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. slightly above your pay grade, to decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament... There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans. Right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, It is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
No
is
one alleging that
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
They're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
won't
you
admit the truth.
and you
Senator
implying
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
and you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent
could
that.
have
And
been.
if anybody
And it
is
could have.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this, what day is it? Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Welcome into Hump Day. Hump them if you got them. Do it consensually, of course. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. We try to just follow the truth wherever it takes us. And we have got a very busy show. In fact, we've got some special guests on the show today. Blowing the lid off the January 6th story, by the way, because we have got some new videotapes that are about to be released on January 6th. Will we see that complete picture? We'll have that a little bit later in the show. Brandon Straka is going to be joining us. He was there on January 6th, had his whole life like turned upside down as a result of that. So we will deep dive that story today.
Plus, what do Western powers want from Mexico? Well, President Biden and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took a little trip south of the border to let Mexico know exactly how they can be one of them, basically.
So we're going to tell Mexico.
Do you want to get in the cool club? You got to do this.
Yeah, we're going to tell Mexico how to live their lives down there. That's what we do. We're also going to look at Ukraine and the very latest on this massive military operation in eastern Ukraine, what that means with a U.S. congressional delegation going to Ukraine, basically saying Ukraine is winning, while there's a massive Russian military operation which solidifies a major move in the east. So I don't know how you square these two round peg, square hole, square.
Yes, they're like apples and oranges, these narratives.
I don't understand it. Plus, Zelensky shows up at the Golden Globes. We'll bring you that and all of that craziness around the drama.
Plus, for those of you on Rumble, we will be talking about updated numbers from the CDC about excess deaths since the pandemic. We don't have a conclusion because no government seems to be willing to talk about this or research why this is happening, but we're going to continue to bring you these numbers until we do have some good research around it. We are going to do that exclusively on Rumble because YouTube has a narrative about COVID, and we don't want to get punished for not breaking that narrative, but asking questions about that narrative, which we have in the past.
Also, we're going to look at the biggest trends of 2023. Our friend Gerald Celente is going to be joining us. He writes the Trends Journal. He's been accurately predicting for years what is unfolding in the news media. The 2014 coup in Ukraine, the 2008 housing and economic collapse. So we have his big predictions for 2023. Wait till you hear the list that he's got. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Wednesday. Good to see all of you. Hope you guys are having a good start to your new year. How many of you have broken your New Year's resolutions?
By eating chocolate for lunch? Yes, I have. Twice.
Did you really?
Yes. With peanut butter, if that makes sense.
I don't even make them anymore.
Yeah? You don't even make New Year's resolutions? See, I do because...
Oh, wait, I forgot.
Oh, you made one?
I forgot. I was going to say, like, in solidarity with Ukraine, I'm only going to speak like this today. Like Zelensky.
Can we mute him, please?
Yeah, can we please mute?
Yeah.
On it.
Philip, can you put him on mute?
On it. Yeah, Philip's all over that. No, so New Year's resolutions, that's the thing. I never, I every year, because my birthday is New Year's Eve, I do make the New Year's resolution. It's just like plans, not like resolutions.
Magic spells.
And they usually fall apart right around now.
Okay.
So, yeah, about the 11th of the month.
Uh-huh.
Doing good.
All right, great.
I saw somebody tweet this morning and I started laughing. He's like, man, I can't wait for all these New Year resolution gym members to start leaving so the gyms are empty again.
Oh, yeah.
I can get our equipment back again.
You can park again.
I take it easy on myself. I take it easy on myself every year. I have the same resolution every year, and it's just to do a little bit better than I did last year.
There you go.
I like that.
I set the bar kind of achievable.
Well,
Are there years where you're like, I did worse?
Oh, yeah, there's always...
You
No,
think?
that's never happened.
No, I said my reading goal last year was to read 52 books last year. So I hit that goal at the end of the year, 52 books. And I was setting up my new reading goal for this year, for 2023. And I was getting it in, I do it in Goodreads. And I just was like, 52, that's a good number. One book a week, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, 52. And my 12-year-old son goes, well, Daddy, why don't you go for 53? And I was like, oh, you man. And I just like had to look over at him like, yes, I guess that's a good idea. And I plugged in 53. So now my goal is up to book. By the time I'm like 100, it's going to be like, I don't know.
That's nice. I lapped you by 18 books.
But you also read a lot of children's books. Okay,
No,
let's get started with the show.
I read 70
tonight.
books last year, and many of them were hard books.
A lot of the Mr.
Follow
books.
us both on, that's not the Mr. books.
Mr.
Follow
Bounce.
us both on Goodreads, and you'll see.
Little Miss Uppity. Excellent books. You can hit your reading goal very, very quickly. No, she reads a lot, and so do we. So do I. But she beat me by like 10 books this year.
That's 18 books. I read 70 books.
If you take out the kids' books.
They're not children's books.
Let's get started with the show. Let's get started with the show. All right, let's. Before we get to the news, we do want to mention that we do have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie writes it when she's not reading children's books. She writes the newsletter. You go to Redacted.inc, put in your email address, click submit. And then tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, you'll receive the daily newsletter from Redacted. We cover about 5 or 6 big stories in the newsletter, and with a little humor, we cover some of the markets. We show you some things you might have missed overnight, and then you'll receive that email first thing in the morning. So just go to Redacted.inc, sign up for the newsletter. And by the way, the reason we really, really want you to sign up is because, well, first of all, it's free. But also, when we're censored on different platforms, it's a way that we're able to communicate with you. When we were banned on YouTube 4 different times, we were able to communicate with our audience and say, hey guys, we are banned on YouTube. Please come over here to Rumble. Please check us out over here on Twitter, etc., and Twitch and so forth. And so it's very important for us to stay connected, separate from these big tech platforms. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start and let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine tonight. So sitting U.S. Senator Angus King, that's a name, Angus. Mm-hmm. He spent about 48 hours in Ukraine, and now he knows everything that you need to know about Ukraine. According to him, Ukraine, and according to his congressional delegation, Ukraine is winning this war. According to him, Vladimir Zelensky, his words, by the way, was one of the most inspiring men he's ever met and ever seen in his entire lifetime. Okay. And according to him, Ukraine has an accounting of every weapon and every dollar, right down to the spare parts that we're sending them. So they know where everything that we're sending them is going. It's being tracked. They've got a spreadsheet. It's all being tracked. But he didn't stop there. I mean, once again, members of the United States Congress are openly saying that the only way this war ends is with Putin removed from office, regime change. So this is the only way we're getting through this.
I mean, that's dangerous rhetoric, but I guess we have to up the rhetoric in case we sort of hit peak Zelensky.
Well, yeah, because if he's done, and which is likely going to happen, who are they going to put in place? So they're going to just continue this onslaught. And eventually...
Right. No matter his fate, though, is there a point where people in the West hit peak Zelensky and just don't want to see him anymore, don't want to hear this any longer? We have to continue to raise the rhetoric in order to continue to have people support this war, which we've seen poll after poll, that support is waning. Well,
maybe Zelensky needs to do more award show presentations in order to raise that number up more. I don't know. So here's Senator Angus King just led this delegation to meet with Zelensky in Ukraine and returned over the weekend to talk about it. Here he is yesterday at a town hall explaining how Putin needs to be removed in order for this war to end. That's the only option. That's the only way the United States is going to stop funding this thing. Watch.
Earlier, there was sort of some questioning of U.S. involvement at home in the Ukraine conflict. How long should we remain there?
Well, I'd hate to set a date and say, 6 months or a year. That's telling Putin, all he's got to do is hold his breath until that date comes. So I believe we should remain there until Putin is out. And that I don't see this as a long 20-year struggle, which we saw in Afghanistan.
Oh, good. I don't see it as a 20-year struggle, but I'm certainly not going to say a year.
We have a strong government, a strong armed services that are fighting on their own with our help, but they're the people that are dying. They're the people that are on the front lines. And I think
and that's a good thing. Like, that's what he's basically saying. He's like, we should just point out here that it's the Ukrainians that are dying. Like, they're the ones being killed.
This is an acceptable sacrifice to me.
Right. Like, I love, I have my nice little office here with all my nice books. I have my Alexander Hamilton book up here on my shelf. Like, I care about democracy is what he's telling us by these books on his shelf, right? And we love democracy. And we should just point out that the people that are dying, that are getting killed, they're just Ukrainians. It's just Ukrainians. So don't worry about it. I know you're an American reporter asking me this question. We don't need to worry about this.
It is safely far from self, basically.
Right. So here he is.
Putin's main strategy right now is to split us.
Okay. Please tell all of us about Putin's military strategy, Angus King.
Is to split the U.S. Congress, to undermine support here, to split NATO, to undermine support from the Western countries. That's his last gasp. That's his last chance.
He's losing. I mean, he is absolutely losing. This is his last gasp.
Military strategy.
Right.
He can't win this war now.
Yeah, he can't win this war. It's unwinnable for Putin.
Circumstances between the will to fight of the Ukrainian people and the arms and material and support, humanitarian support that we're providing. When I say we, I mean the West. He can't win.
Yeah, he can't win. It's over. I mean, it is over for Putin. He can't win. Ukraine is winning the hearts and minds of the world, and because of all the material that we're sending. But I just love to hear a U.S. congressman tell us what Putin's military strategy is.
In terms of propaganda, right? But that's an old favorite too. You can put that hit on and keep spinning it, Putin's propaganda. I saw a media study this morning, which was in the newsletter, if you're reading your newsletter, that showed that media analysts were not able to prove that Russian bots were able to influence any voters in 2016.
In America.
In the U.S., yeah, right. During the presidential election.
Oh, you can't say that out loud. What is Rachel Maddow going to do?
Well, we're talking about 2016, and basically anyone who was exposed to any Russian propaganda, there is no evidence that it may have swayed their votes, and that it was mostly America doing it to itself. All of the sort of crazed voters who didn't know what to do, like Russia, according to media analysts, which again you can find in the newsletter, they didn't need to do much. They didn't have much effect on the election.
Oh, so Hillary Clinton was lying then.
And so this idea that this is just another one we can just keep spinning out because people believe that Russia wants you to believe something other than what the mainstream media wants you. So these are the divides, right? Mainstream media benevolent, Putin malevolent, and these are fighting forces inside your head is what they want us to tell you. And anytime you question mainstream media narrative, you're going towards Putin's side.
Billy Jack in our Rumble chat says, yeah, a couple of lame memes would have changed the election. Yeah. Like, you know what? I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but then I saw a funny meme on Facebook, and therefore then I voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it works.
Well, you wouldn't have seen it on Twitter because they banned memes on Twitter.
And Twitter itself, we reported last week, was not able to find this, despite reports from the U.S. Congress saying this is happening. Even Twitter went looking for it because it was trying to be a good little doggy when the U.S. government asked for it, and they could not. And Senator Mark Warner, was it? Mm-hmm. Mark Warner then started to attack.
Well, and remember, we were told several intelligence agencies found proof. We were told.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all a Russian disinformation campaign. So you can't take the fact that Hillary lost. I mean, come on. So that's the senator. That's one piece of what the senator had to say. My favorite part, though, of this speech is where a U.S. senator says that he's super confident that Ukraine is tracking every dollar, every spare part that we're sending them. He says, I really pushed Zelensky on this point. So you have nothing to worry about your tax dollars. Every penny is being tracked. How many of you actually believe that line? Let me know in the chat. So
okay, and also, before you push play, I'm very curious to see if he asks for an accounting of that FTX money. So go ahead. Let's see about that.
Let's see if he answers that. Go ahead, Senator. Take it away.
Good morning, Senator. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I caught you on Face the Nation yesterday talking a little bit about this, and was just hoping to follow up on something that Margaret Brennan had asked you about regarding accountability for the funding that we are sending to Ukraine. And I know you had a conversation with Vladimir Zelensky about that. Can you just talk a little bit about the process of making sure that they are accounting for every dollar that is being spent?
Well, as I mentioned, I raised it with him, and basically what I said was, look, if there's a scandal, in fact, I used these words, I said, if there's a scandal involving the misuse of these resources, that will jeopardize any additional resources flowing. He understood that.
Oh, did he understand that because it's already frickin' happened? He would understand. He understood my English when I said scandal. He understood that word. And if that's going to happen...
But even there's wiggle room there. Like, if there's a scandal, we may slow up some of the support. We won't stop it. It's just going to be in jeopardy. So if we can't account for it, we think there's maybe a major financial scandal. That might be a problem. Not a big one. Little one.
Little one. Don't worry about it. Just it'll be a little scandal, and you'll have to answer for that.
Then, later on, we had a meeting with the Deputy Secretary of Defense and some of their technical people where we had a PowerPoint demonstrating the software. They're using SAP software, which I see advertised in airports. It's a data maintenance software. And they're also working with Deloitte, the worldwide accounting firm, to work out the process by which, and what we saw.
By the way, who's paying for the Deloitte accounting team to come in and audit this? Who? You and I are paying for this.
Deloitte is counting bullets and guns?
Yeah, Deloitte is being used. This is nice to know. I'm sure Deloitte wants the PR for this. So now Deloitte is on the hook. Now we've named names, right? Because now we can say that Deloitte, the accounting firm, is tracking everything. So if there is a scandal, who will we point to?
Okay,
and
cool.
It gets off our bet,
They put up on the screen is spreadsheets with literally every spare part. And the question I asked is, okay, this is all very nice, but is anybody going out and actually physically taking inventory, counting what's there? And the answer is yes. And then we're doing the same thing.
And then he goes, oh, the answer is yes. Really? Who? Who is the team of people that is going into the field, going out to eastern Ukraine right now, going into Soledar, going into Bakhmut, going into these trenches, there's no one going out. Can I see your gun, please? I just want to see and track all of these weapons and these parts, and I just want to make sure everything is getting to the field. I'm here, I'm the accountant, I'm the Deloitte accountant for Ukraine, and I want to see all of these things. Can you please? No one is doing that. I mean, really? I don't buy that for a hairy second.
But he says he saw spreadsheets.
He saw a spreadsheet.
And you know what? I learned from the Bernie Madoff docuseries that we watched over the weekend that it's easy to make a spreadsheet about falsities.
Yeah,
Bernie Madoff did that a lot when people asked him, where's my money? Where's all this transaction? And he wrote fiction in terms of spreadsheets.
Yeah, he brings in Pickhour, who is one of his biggest investing buddies, and he's over his shoulder looking at it, and he's like, I need to see more than that. Like, I can see you can show me a transaction on a piece of paper. I need to see more than that.
I need full ledgers. And he's like, got it.
Got a fake spreadsheet right here that you can take a look at.
It was the great American novel on a dot matrix.
So, well, and what percentage of equipment did they say actually makes it to Ukraine? So are they only counting what actually makes it? You know what I mean? Question. So the percentage that's lost everywhere else, we don't know about that. Like, that doesn't count there. They're accounting for the 30% they're getting. Come on.
Yeah. Let me see here. So let me see, Zelensky. We sent you 100 tanks last month. Now we noticed that only about 10 of them actually arrived here in Ukraine. The other 90 have been sold on the black market. Now
wasn't signed for. It's not our responsibility.
Of those 10 that did arrive, have you been able to catalog? We're going to ask our Deloitte person where those tanks are in the field. Do you guys have a counting of that? Well, they told me yes. Oh, good. So Americans, just rest easy. I know you can't pay for heating oil right now. That's fine. You can't pay your electric bills. You can't pay your rent. There's grocery store shelves empty. Can't get medicines right now. Can't get children's Motrin. I mean, the list is endless right now. But don't worry, we got it under control.
They should send the greeters from Walmart. Just send them out there, and they can check all the receipts as people are walking around.
That's a good idea.
And put a little happy smiley face on it with a little yellow happy face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, like the stickers that they give babies and stuff.
So, you got to check your gun right here. Let me just a little smiley face right on your receipt, your tank receipt. So overnight, Russia took control of the key mining town of Soledar, which had a vast underground tunnel system. You can see some of the video. This was seen as a crucial area to getting access to the area of Bakhmut, and what a lot of the thermobaric weapons, bombs, which have been devastating, they've been using. So nothing can hide from these. These trenches, nothing. Russia has been just merciless in using these thermobaric weapons on these targets. You can see some of these bombs in action. You can just see just look at the reverberations of after these things hit, the shock waves of these things hitting. So it's just crazy. Absolutely brutal. Former CIA analyst Larry Johnson has been calling total BS on the Western media's fake news narrative that Ukraine is winning this war. He's been cataloging it daily. He wrote a devastating article this morning showing just how bad things are going for Ukraine. I spoke to him just a short time ago. Listen. Larry, welcome back to the show. So your piece was really interesting this morning because when you hear Senator Angus King talk there just a few moments ago, he's telling us that Ukraine is winning, Russia's losing, and that the only way for this war to end, the United States to not have an involvement anymore, is for Putin to be taken down, regime change. But you're reporting on this, and the advancements of the Russian forces seem at polar opposites of what the United States senator is talking about. What is he talking about?
Yeah, no, it's just the facts on the ground belie it. Even CNN, who has been one of the cheerleaders for the Russia is losing meme, came out with an interview of a soldier on the front line who said they're just stacking bodies and they can't even remove the bodies. They're dead everywhere. And that's not dead Russians. Those are dead Ukrainians. Russia is not adopting World War II tactics where they would have massive human wave attacks against entrenched German positions. They've gotten smarter. They are using thermobaric warheads off of the TOS system. They are using artillery. They're using other missiles and rockets. They're saturating the area, and it's making it impossible for any Ukrainian to stay above ground. So these are facts, and yet the West completely ignores them. And I know firsthand from a friend of mine who's an intelligence officer in a particular military command that, in fact, the Defense Intelligence Agency, when they're briefing on casualties that Ukraine is suffering and casualties that Russia is supposedly suffering, it is coming entirely from Ukraine. The Ukrainian officials are telling us, we killed 10,000 of them. And that's what's been reported in military channels. I mean, it's absurd. It's nonsensical.
And so we're seeing, of course, this major advancement from the Russians. We're seeing NATO stepping up, sending additional heavy weapons, Bradley fighting vehicles, all sorts of additional weapons in this latest tranche. The Biden White House announcing the largest yet shipment. And to hear Senator King say it in his interview, he says, well, we're really tracking every spare part that comes through. They're using Deloitte as an accounting firm, and they're managing it through the software. And I was really convinced that they are tracking every spare part. And he said, that was great that they're tracking these spare parts. Do they have anyone going out into the field and actually confirming that spare part is being used? And he said, the answer I got back was yes. It sounds like they're just spinning him a whole pile of garbage here. What does your intelligence sourcing tell you about the tracking of American weapons and munitions going into this zone? Is it being tracked accurately?
Yeah, no, it's not. And The reality is these weapons, they keep saying we're going to send more weapons, more vehicles, more armaments, more ammunition. Yeah, eventually we will. The reality is that we don't have it. We don't have these warehouses bursting to the seams with extra vehicles and extra artillery shells. So they're having to commission them to ask them to be made. And the problem is the U.S. industrial capability is basically not what it once was. So they're looking at months, possibly a year or more. The reality, before some of this equipment is ever delivered, I don't think Ukraine will exist in its current form. So we got a lot of political theater with respect to saying, it is true, they're appropriating the money, they're obligating the funds, but in many cases, that's being spent here in the United States on military industrial companies. And it's not like going out to a Walmart, filling your cart with some artillery shells and then shipping them over.
And if that wasn't enough, I mean, last night Zelensky made an appearance at the Golden Globes. So as you heard Larry, they're just talking about these, the Ukrainians are being used as cannon fodder, but it doesn't stop Volodymyr Zelensky from going out and doing like award shows and award presentations. And so he shows up at the Golden Globes last night. And it was to ask for more money, by the way. It was one of the cringiest things that I've seen in a long time. Watch this. Sean Penn introducing him.
If the freedom to dream were a spear, I proudly present a human being who tonight represents that spear's most honed tip.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of the 80th Golden Globe Award ceremony, the award was won at a special time. The Second World War wasn't over yet, but the tide was turned. All knew who would win. There were still battles and tears ahead. It was then when the Golden Globe Award appeared to honor best performers of 1943. It is now 2023. The war in Ukraine is not over yet, but the tide is turning, and it is already clear who will win.
Yeah, it's really clear who will win. I mean, you're literally watching theater there. We know who's going to win.
Yeah, and I don't think that spear is a very good analogy. I didn't really. Yeah. I wasn't able to follow it.
No.
I didn't like that writing.
I can't follow anything that man says anymore.
If we're judging on performance and art and metaphor, that doesn't win the Golden Globe.
Yeah, he's the tip of the spear. He's the what of the spear?
He's just the tip. Right?
Yeah, that's right. He's just the tip. He just gave him the tip.
That's what he said. He's the tip of the spear.
That's right. So it is just the tip.
He called him just the tip.
Just the tip.
Well, and I just I cringed immediately when he first said his first word, because what is that voice? That is a forced thing, is it not? Like, have you heard him speak like that? Like when he was doing comedy, he sounded nothing like that.
But now I can definitely tell you who was the best in the previous year. It was you. It was you.
He sounds like that guard on the top of the castle in Monty Python. I fought in your general direction.
Yeah. Millie little wapao, I see you and I raise your. I fought in your general direction. We don't want it. We already have one. We don't want anymore. The French guy. Anyway, and then on top of that, he is asking for more money, and he then went on to say that World War III is not here. It's not here. It's not coming. It's not here. No. We are already in World War III. Like, are you out of your freaking mind? Every NATO country is literally in Ukraine, arming Ukraine, using troops from NATO and attacking. Like, what more evidence do you need that we are in a freaking world war? Like,
I don't know.
Do you need someone to stand there and like stamp it and declare it like a war? Like, it's happening. It's happening right in front. The whole world is like going into economic recession because we are in a world war right now.
No. But here's the thing that really bothers me so much about it, because of course, Ukraine should be pulling out all the stops to get what they need. If you're the center of Ukraine, and if somebody's willing to give you this platform, you can't fault Zelensky. You fault just like the Will Smith slapgate, right? You fault people in the room who can't tell the difference between teaching other people to choose sides in war. And, you know, just like everybody sort of laughed when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock on live TV, everyone there is like, yes, we take sides. Yes, we promote, you know, war. Yeah. Yes, we like this. And you could hear when he was announced, there was this sort of tepid clapping, you know, for instance, like we were at a children's event recently and there was some pro-Ukraine stuff. And I spoke to one of the organizers and I was like, children should not be taught to choose sides. And I feel this way about the Golden Globes, is that we should not teach audiences to choose sides in war. We are not the Pentagon. And so our cultural, you know, ceremonies should be free of this, should be void of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and then we keep dragging this guy out there and putting him up there. And he's a puppet for, I mean, of course, he's a puppet for the West.
Yeah.
So as soon as they have their next puppet, they're going to do the same thing with the next puppet. So he is a tool of the West.
But
He's
this is now the template. If we had had somebody in previous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just a bad guy, but what's so valuable for the Pentagon now is that we had bad guys in Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and Afghanistan.
Hitler.
Okay, yes, I was thinking Osama bin Laden, thank you, was
thinking of your rogues gallery.
Yes, but we didn't have a good guy to juxtapose with the bad guy. Now we have it.
Right.
And look how powerful it is in the media. And we should reject this because we should never want war to be simplified so that we can just easily take a side and then move on with our day.
Right. Peace now. Like that's one, if we have one stand on this show, it's peace, right? So you know, that way Putin can stop attacking infrastructure and, you know, turn get the lights back on. People won't freeze this winter. Stop now, make these concessions, come to the settlement table. But instead, NATO doesn't want that. NATO doesn't want that, and the West doesn't want that. They want perpetual war in Ukraine, and all of these Western corporations like BlackRock that are buying up as much as they can right now because they want to own what is left of Ukraine. And that's what's happening. It's all about money, and it's all about power. So we've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. We're going to be looking at the January 6th and the 14,000 hours of videotapes which could be released. We're going to bring the very latest to you on that, and the story you really have never heard about January 6th. We have a guest who was there that day who had his life turned upside down as a result of being arrested because of what happened that day. So we'll bring you that story. But first, we want to talk about Mexico. So we love to go to Mexico. The United States, Justin Trudeau, Canada, President Biden love to go to Mexico and tell them what to do and how to run their country. The World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and the plans for remaking North America, it's all coming together. All of this sort of borderless society is exactly what they want. And now we're getting to see President Biden in Mexico sort of carrying out a lot of these wishes. And also being thanked by the Mexican president.
Well, we've seen what U.S. goals are in Mexico. For instance, litigating about not being able to put gas stations and petrol infrastructure inside Mexico because Mexico decided it wanted to be more autonomous. The United States litigated that.
Right. So, no, you can't.
We know exactly what they want from them when it comes to factories. We know a lot of U.S. factories are, in fact, moved to Mexico. We just reported on one, which was Jeep, I believe, was moving from, was it Illinois or Indiana? One of those. I'm sorry, it escapes me at the moment. We know that we like the idea of U.S. companies benefiting from cheap labor. We also want to sort of put our carbon credits, save them for ourselves and put that on them. Those are things that, like, we've seen politicians talking about. But the problem, the sticking point here is all those immigrants coming across the border that's kind of getting in the way of this negotiation.
Yeah.
And so in this meeting, just over the last 48 hours, North American leaders, including Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, thanked President Biden for not building the wall between the two countries. Watch.
You, President Biden, you are the first president of the United States in a very long time that has not built not even 1 meter of wall. And that, we thank you for that, sir.
So you haven't done anything. Keeping the border wide open. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, you know that in Latin languages you speak in double negatives.
Right.
We thank you for not doing this. That's so maybe that is a little bit lost in translation, but it doesn't really explain Mexico's position on this. We assume it means that he wants people to be able to get past that border without obstacle.
Yeah.
Is that how you take it?
Well, the way I take it is absolutely. We showed you the video a few weeks ago of Mexican police in a, what would you call it, a motorcade? Motorcade,
yeah.
Motorcade. The Mexican police leading buses to the border, right to the United States. Because what you have to realize is most of the illegal immigrants coming to the United States, they're not Mexican. They are Guatemalan, they are Honduran, they're coming up through Mexico. So if our border is tight and secure, where do they wind up? They wind up at the wall. They stop, and then, well, now we're in Mexico.
So the idea is that Mexico cannot meet these demands that its, second and third floor neighbors want from them, which is, we're going to talk later about a semiconductor industry, more green carbon credits, all kinds of things like that. If it continues to receive an inflow of immigrants from Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And so they want that border to be porous so that anyone moving through there can just keep on going because they don't want to obviously use their resources. He addressed this in a lengthy response to a question about immigration. I'm going to play you a little bit of it. He just goes on and on and on. It's funny because President Biden and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau are kind of shuffling their feet. It's like they don't know what to do when someone just keeps talking. They're used to doing the droning on. So I'll play it for you. And then, boys, you guys tell me when you just can't take it anymore. Okay?
We did speak about migration in a very broad manner.
Okay, that was good enough.
Well, and can I point out too that the Intercept, so take this with a grain of salt. The Intercept did an article in September saying that Biden did restart construction on the wall. So
I also wondered about that.
There's some conflicting reports about what is it new under Biden, or is it like stuff that had nothing to do with Biden and it was under Trump and it was just continuing because it was allocated funds and it was already going. Right. So yeah, there's some confusion as to whose wall portion is this, but who knows? But no, I'm sorry. Let's play a little bit more of this.
Of course, there is cooperation with the U.S. administration, and at the same time, we have the commitment to protect migrants. What President Biden has proposed
Look at Biden and Trudeau look like statues.
True. If migrants cross our country, and in some cases they also go through other countries in Latin America to arrive in the United States, migrants are facing so many risks when they do that.
That's an interesting thing to say because, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and Trudeau is standing there thinking God, I'm so lucky that my country is so far to the north and freezing.
Yeah.
And we've become so authoritarian in Canada that no one wants to come all the way up here. They make it through Mexico, they're tired. They get to Texas, they're tired. And then they just stay there. Thank God they don't keep going all the way to our country.
Right. I mean, he's saying if they're crossing through Mexico to get to the United States, that's really dangerous. Sort of an admission that Mexico is a dangerous place, which I can speak to because my sister just moved from there for that reason.
Yeah, it's brutal right now. And of course, the cartel violence is out of control. Just look what's been happening over the past 10 days. The full-on civil war there between the cartels. And it's lawlessness. So, of course, he doesn't want an additional round of immigrants in his country coming from Nicaragua and Honduras and Guatemala. Yes, he wants them to go into the United States. And what's amazing is that the United States, and he's praising President Biden for like his open border policy, basically.
Which it's not, though. The Biden administration is having sort of split personality about this because in this meeting, the president said that he does want to expand access to the United States to immigrants. He wants more of them. He just doesn't want them in the way they're coming now. Here's the quote. He says, people have had to make it through jungles, the long journey to the border. Many are victimized, not only in terms of what they have to pay, but victimized physically in other ways. We're trying to make it easier for people to get here, opening up the capacity to get here, but not have them go through that god-awful process. So you think about it, the Biden administration is defending their right to repeal Title 42. Title 42 means that immigrants will be sent back if they come at the border. He wants that to end. The Supreme Court did not let him end it. So he's fighting the courts on this while he put it back in place himself. Those are two conflicting moves. And he's saying, well, these are just, we have to do this until we figure out how to let them come in like a smooth manner.
Similar to what they've done with Ukraine. So that's exactly what they've done with Ukrainian refugees, which is like, we're going to make it super simple. We're going to set up all of these nice offices so that Ukrainian refugees can come through and be transferred and processed and brought right into the United States. Oh, but if you're from other parts, if you're from Haiti or other parts of the, other parts of the world, you're going to be stuck and not to be able to come through, or you'll be in really awful conditions and processing to get your visa appointments and so forth. So they know how, if they want to make it smooth sailing, smooth criminal, they can do it for certain people, just not for others.
Yeah, what were you going to say, David?
I'm saying I'm not an expert or a politician, so I'm going to put that out there first, but I have an idea that I think might stop all of this in the first place, and that is maybe if we stop bombing people and putting sanctions on other countries, they'd stop having to come here.
Yes.
Stop it with your common sense.
Now we've been talking about this.
That's almost like saying.
Go ahead, Phil.
I was gonna say that's almost like saying if we destabilize a government and like stage a coup to overthrow a democratically elected government, that there will be repercussions.
Yes, imagine that. Imagine that. I mean, we did a whole segment back in November here on the show about Nicaragua, specifically about Nicaragua, and how because we've destabilized that country, that's why they're coming. So they don't have a country anymore because the United States effed it up. So there, you're looking for all of these like Band-Aid solutions to the problem when, and to David's point, maybe if you stop bombing their countries or destabilizing their governments, they would have a government and a country that they wouldn't want to leave. Nicaraguans, I heard from so many Nicaraguans after we did that story. They were like, thank you for saying this. We do not want to leave our country, but we have no choice. We have nothing. We are in absolute despair, so we have to leave because it's destroyed.
Right.
Thanks to the West.
Put yourself in their shoes and think about this. Like, think about how hard it would be, any of us here sitting in our houses right now, to make a decision that we have to leave because things are so bad that we cannot survive.
Yeah. You have no electricity. You have no jobs. They've taken away, everything is so expensive. The money is now worthless. Your money,
and you have kids who you can't feed.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
So if you knew you could go somewhere where you could get help to feed your family, and that's what we've done to these countries. We've destabilized these countries, so it's on us.
Yeah. Now, the internet...
There's nothing...
yes.
Sorry. I was going to say, there's nothing about that journey coming from Nicaragua through Mexico to the United States that people want to do it. That's just the thing you have to keep in mind is like, it's not like people are just like, hey, I'm going to go there and have a better life, so I'm going to go through this. It's like they have no choice.
Not like they're Mount Everest.
It's desperation.
Yeah. Life's an adventure.
Like
Let's go battle some coyotes.
Like they're doing it for fun. Like, hey, we're going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro so I can prove to myself, or I'm going to do an Ironman so I can prove my own self-worth from doing all of these special runs and these marathons.
Or like the Camino de Compostela. Like, that's not this.
No.
This is not a soul journey. You're right. One other thing about this group of leader, which is that the internet is calling them the three amigos. I kind of like that. They agreed, among other things that they talked about, to build a semiconductor business together. They want North America to be more of a hub for semiconductors. So how do they do that? With my favorite political word, my favorite diplomatic word is summitry. We're going to have some summitry. We'll have some summits, a semiconductor forum with industry representatives, and we'll do it in early 2023. It was like a Yeah, let's do that, boys. And they're going to coordinate on figuring out how to get their semiconductor supply chain needs. Where do those materials get mined? Important question. No one thought to ask. One more thing worth noting, though, and I thought we'd play a little game about this.
I love games.
Because these three dudes, let's put them back on the screen if we can. Their three respective countries are the hosts of the World Cup in 2026. And so I thought it might be kind of fun, you know, because the next World Cup is North America, which I still don't understand how that's going to work. We have a map here of like where the games will be. There'll be no central location. It's just all throughout North America. I guess that's exciting. Yeah, I think it's kind of stupid, but okay. If any football fans see that this is a good idea. My brother-in-law is Mexican, and he's like, that's the stupidest thing ever. So how about a little sportsman-like bet? Which of these three amigos will still be head of state in 2026? Trudeau is a maybe because he can run for re-election in 2025 when his term is up. We don't know if he will, and would he even win? We hear from a lot of Canadians that do not like him.
Yes.
But sure, plenty do, maybe. I don't know. They don't write to us if they do. Okay, Biden most likely will run in 2024. Will he make it to 2026?
No.
I mean...
No, I don't think. I think he will be so far. I mean, his dementia, all you need to do is look back 2 years to look at Biden speaking and compare it to 2 years hence.
He could not make it through a debate stage. You have to water him to keep him alert these days.
There's no way.
Right.
But hey, I mean, look, Fetterman won. So, you know, if the deep state wants him, I'm not saying he won't win. Like, I'm saying the deep state will probably push him to be the candidate, will push him to be.
And then just the odds of biology are against him for 2026, for 2 years into this next term. And Lopez Obrador, he's out. Because Mexico has a 6-year term limit. He cannot run again. His term limit actually ends in 2024. 2024, yes.
So it'll be.
It's between Trudeau and Biden. Will any of them make it as head of state for the World Cup 2026? Put your bets in now.
They're saying no way. There's no way. So yeah, let us know. Well, who will survive? Will it be Trudeau? Will it be Biden? It won't be Obrador.
Let's take it to a kickoff. Who would win?
It'll just be a bag of skin in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's really what we're heading towards. All right, we've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. Coming up, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to have a guest who was there on January 6th, Brandon Straka, who had his whole life turned upside down being at the Capitol that day. We just got word that Congress is pushing to release 14,000 hours of video that we've never seen. Why was this suppressed about what happened that day? We're talking body cam footage. We're talking everything, the whole enchilada. We're going to break that down and what we could expect to see from that 14,000 hours of video. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo, because right now you can get 15 free stocks. That's right. Just by going to redacted.inc/Moomoo and opening an account, making your initial deposit with them, they will give you access to these additional stocks for setting up your account. Now, the market is kind of crazy right now. We did see a nice big uptick in the market in the past few days. But you might want to sit this one out right now in the market. It's kind of crazy. So you may just want to get these free stocks and just sit there and wait. Keep them in your account for free. Let them grow over the next year. Do whatever you want to do. And then you can sell the stocks and then you have them in your account. Again, you're not spending money to open up a trading account. You're just activating your account. You get these stocks. You can do whatever you want with them. Then you're also entered into all kinds of additional giveaways that they have at Moomoo. So it's a great trading platform. I love using it on my iPhone. I have real-time alerts set up on my iPhone for different stocks that I track and follow, different commodity sectors, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's gold sector, silver, precious metals. I have all of these different alerts set up right there on my phone. Really, really simple to do. Plus, they've got news and things built in so you can learn as well. If you want to educate yourself, become more financially intelligent, this is a great way to do it. So check them out and get your app for free and get the stocks for free. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Again, that's redacted.inc/Moomoo. Let's talk about January 6th. As most Americans, most people around the world have a really narrow understanding of what unfolded on that day. We do know that there have been thousands of Americans rounded up, persecuted by authorities. We now know another 1,000 or so arrests are coming down the pike. We're hearing this from authorities that another round of arrests are coming. Over 14,000 hours of videotaped footage has been withheld from the American people, so they don't get to see what actually happened that day. Why did this not come out during the January 6th hearings? Congressman Matt Gaetz just announced that Republicans are set to release 14,000 hours of video and documents related to January 6th that Americans haven't seen. Watch.
Kevin McCarthy told us he's going to get the evidence out in front of the American people, and that means releasing the 14,000 hours of tapes that have been hidden, that I think would give more full context to that day rather than the cherry-picked moments that the January 6th committee tried to use to inflame and further divide our country. So yes, I do believe that part of this deal is a concession that we are going to get the truth.
Well, Brandon Straka was there that day, had his life turned upside down. He's been pushing for these videos to be released, and he had an unbelievable story, which we can get to later. Brandon's going to be joining us for a deeper dive into his story as part of our Redacted Conversations series. But I wanted to welcome Brandon to the show, who's been out there pushing for transparency on this story to release these 14,000 hours so that the American people can see what happened on that day. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you were there that day, of course. You had your life turned upside down. As I mentioned, we'll do a deeper dive into what happened to you that day. You were there for a speaking engagement, filming what was unfolding. Didn't even realize that around the other side of the Capitol, there had been some violence. There had been windows broken. You were on the other side. You had your life turned upside down. And I think most Americans, as you even said, later in the day, started to see two very different pictures being painted of what was happening that day. From the American people have had these 14,000 hours of footage withheld from them, so we don't get to see police opening the doors. We don't get to see a whole lot of things. What do you hope we will see in some of this new footage that Congress possibly is about to release? Are you hopeful about this?
Oh, I'm very hopeful. I mean, all I can say is that what I hope is that we have a clearer picture of the truth. I mean, yes, obviously, deep down inside, I would like to believe that the footage that exists that we're about to see will show a different side of things, that will maybe not cast all of the people, the Trump supporters and people who went there to protest in this completely vilified light that they've been in for the last 2 years, myself included. But ultimately, what I want to know is the truth. I mean, if the truth is that Trump supporters and only Trump supporters became incredibly violent and became incredibly destructive and nobody else was involved and nobody else did anything wrong, then okay, it is what it is. It just feels very hard to believe that that is what the actual truth is, or that's what the story is. I just want a complete picture. I mean, that's it. So, you know, what I'm hopeful is that we'll see police body cam footage. Here's one example. We've been told for 2 years that Trump supporters went to the Capitol and started beating on police officers and acting destructive. And not only that, but we're screaming racial epithets. We're engaged in, you know, just vile and hideous rhetoric revolved around racism. I just find that really hard to believe. Now, I'm not saying that maybe nobody did that, but I've traveled the country for years, going to Trump rallies, doing my own events for conservative communities. I've never met these people that the media describes, and yet they were acting as though this was just a commonplace sort of behavior that day. Well, if it was, then I think that the police body cam footage would show that. And so I'm expecting to see lots and lots of hours of MAGA people engaging in racial slurs, since that's what the media told us. If we don't see that in this footage, that's just one example of something that I think that we should be asking questions about.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And there's so many pieces of eyewitness testimony who watched doors being opened. I mean, these are heavy Capitol doors, big metal doors that were opened from eyewitness testimony from the inside. They were opened and waved for people to come inside. But we don't get to hear that side of the story. And as others have pointed out, almost every angle of that day was filmed. Everything was filmed that day. And why Congress only chose to release and hide 14,000 hours of it, why do you think that is? Why do you think that 14,000 hours has been kept from the American people?
Well, again, I'd like to a certain degree, reserve judgment until I've actually seen the footage, but one could certainly imagine that there could be footage within those 14,000 hours that are being withheld that would be destructive to their narrative. And, one thing that I would like to say, as I've been saying in all of my interviews, is people seem to think that, one side of the story is being presented, by the left-wing media, the Democrats, and anybody who wishes to vilify Trump supporters. And then naturally people believe, there must be another side to the story. Well, what I keep trying to tell people is that I don't believe this is a one or two narrative. I think that there's hundreds of thousands, maybe a million or more strangers that came together. Lots and lots of people who did not know each other, but found themselves in this situation where they're all sort of gathered together for a common cause. And then this event breaks out, this riot breaks out. But different people were standing on different sides of the building where different things were happening at different times. This was going on, I think, from 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. to 2 or 3 p.m., all different people on different sides of the building. So everyone's experience is completely different. My experience is very, very different than people who were on the other side of the building an hour before I was there, 2 hours before I was there. And so another thing that I would like to see come forward from this footage is for people to recognize that just because a person was arrested or charged, I think people have this perception that if you were arrested or charged, then that must certainly mean you were standing there when people were breaking windows, or you were screaming like "charge," while people were trying to get inside the Capitol. That was not my experience at all over on the east side of the building at 2:45 p.m. Congress had already cleared, by the way. Congress already cleared by the time I arrived on the east side of the building. When I got there, the two large Columbus doors on the east side were already open, and some people were trying to make their way inside. Now, I go inside the Capitol on January 6th. I never inside. I stood outside for 8 minutes filming. But the thing is, most people don't read. All they read is that Brandon Strzok, the founder of the Walkaway campaign, was arrested for in the deadly insurrection. Well, this conjures up images of me going to the Capitol like a lunatic and a madman, with some intent to cause violence or destruction. So I guess my point is that I'm hopeful that we'll get more perspective, that so many different things were happening in so many different areas. And yes, certainly some violence and destruction. But a lot of people were literally just standing somewhere where they shouldn't have been standing, with very little to indicate to them they shouldn't have been there. Literally people arriving when barricades had already been removed. There were no police officers present and thousands of people around. How is somebody supposed to know that they're not supposed to be standing where they're standing? So there's a lot of things we learn from this footage.
Yeah, and I think it's very instructive, because you have Capitol Police waving individuals through doors. How are they supposed to know they weren't welcomed when you have Capitol Police waving people in? Come on in, and waving. We've seen that footage, waving them in, right? And you have people there who were simply filming, didn't know, and then later found out that they were in trouble because they were standing in a certain spot, that now they're trespassing somehow. And I think you make a great point too, that what the media did was lump everyone together. And so you could have been parked illegally on the street and be lumped in as the same person that stole or went into Nancy Pelosi's office and stole a laptop, right? So you were an insurrectionist if you were there that day, but you weren't even near the building. You were across the mall with a parking ticket, and you were lumped in as the same cohort, right?
I've probably received more media coverage for my misdemeanor case than any other January 6th defendant because of who I am and because of my background. And in all of these, I mean, there are a number of articles that actually refer to me as a convicted insurrectionist in the article. Now, I'm convicted of Class B misdemeanor disorderly conduct. Disorderly conduct misdemeanor. That's what I'm convicted of. But the media has turned that into convicted insurrectionist Brandon Straka ... So, yeah, I mean, I facetiously say sometimes, I mean, you could have thrown a gum wrapper on the ground on Capitol grounds and gotten a ticket for littering, and the media would cover it as, you know, your role in the deadly insurrection. You're going to court for your role in the deadly insurrection. It's absurd, but they're trying to paint everybody with a broad brush because, as we all know, at the end of the day, this is about hatred of Donald Trump and hatred of anybody who would have supported him.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I saw a number of articles that labeled you, Brandon rebuked insurrectionist on January 6th. It's unbelievable. And you were there literally filming for 8 minutes, 40 feet away from the door, never went into the building. And this is what you have to deal with. And thousands of other people, just heartbreaking stories that we've been hearing. Families destroyed as a result of this. And of course, another 1,000 or so arrests appear to be coming. So there's no end in sight for this. What are you hearing from people?
Could I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I apologize, just because you did just say a minute ago, I just stood outside for 8 minutes filming, which is true. You're absolutely right. But there are going to be a number of people who are watching this who will look up my case, and they'll look up the details of my case, and they will read the government's allegations, and they will read the left-wing reporting on my case. And they'll say, wait a minute, you're not telling the whole story. Wait a minute. He went there, engaging and trying to incite people to violence. He went there trying to encourage people. That's what they will read. Fine. But I think the question becomes, why would I do that? And for anybody, I mean, I was a public figure before January 6th for 2.5 years. And one of, honestly, the hardest working and most visible people. I mean, I did dozens of events for years, college campus tours, minority-focused town halls. We Walkaway produced our own educational video series. And I do a lot of media because I very much believe in this sort of like boots-on-the-ground approach to spreading the word about Walkaway. So, I mean, I literally did thousands of podcast interviews all the way up to Fox News interviews regularly. People who know me and who have followed me, they know my heart. They know my mission. They know what I'm about. But you would have to believe, in order to believe the government's allegations and in order to believe the media, you would have to believe that while on the way to the Capitol to do my speaking engagement, I spontaneously lost my mind and decided, to hell with it. I'm gonna go try to rile this crowd up and get them to beat up some police officers and get the hell inside that Capitol. Let's F some stuff up. That's what you would have to believe.
Right.
And so, I mean, for anybody who might be watching this who looks up my case and says, well, wait a minute, you're kind of whitewashing that. Okay. But in order to go with your version of events, the one that agrees with the media and the government, you have to bend over backwards to believe I became a completely different person spontaneously and completely lost my mind and filmed myself doing it and then chose to upload my film to Twitter after I did it. That's what you'd have to believe.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's amazing. It's amazing. But they
yeah, you did that.
Yeah, you did that. They put out these phony charges, and then he has to then go defend himself. Unfortunately, they can say whatever they want of those charges. And
sure.
Yeah.
And also
it's ridiculous.
I was going to say, he shot that video on his phone. So he's just holding a phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't even there with like a professional camera and microphone and everything. He was just literally holding his phone, showing a completely different thing than we were shown. That's it.
So we're going to sit down with Brandon for a deeper dive. We ran out of time today, but we're going to sit down with Brandon to do a deeper dive on a redacted conversation about the really deep stuff on what happened on January 6th and some of the unbelievable stories. It's really just heartbreaking. So I hope that we see these 14,000 hours of footage released very, very soon. So someone was asking in the chat, like, what's the new piece of this? The new piece is that we're just announcing 14,000 hours of footage is about to be released.
And that what we have seen so far was heavily curated towards a narrative that may or may not be true.
Yeah, by Nancy Pelosi.
And we are owed the truth.
Absolutely, we are. So we'll have more on.
I mean, I'm one of those who clicked on all the articles, after January 6th, like, oh, this crazy guy with horns. Oh, that guy's naked. Oh, he's stealing that. They're crazy. They're bad people.
I mean, there was so much. Yeah,
like, I ran away with it, and then you realize how much we don't get to know.
Well, and even just Brandon's point, right? He was on one side of the building, David. I'll just say this, so he was on one side of the building filming, and it was totally peaceful. And the doors opened like from the inside out, in one section. And then on the other side, so then he goes back to his hotel and then finds out like what was actually happening on the other side of the Capitol. He was on the east side, and it's a huge city block. So, and I've heard it argued too that maybe they should be things, people should have been facing different levels of like prosecution or whatever based on like different quadrants of the square block where they were, because it's a huge, massive area, and where people were was totally different where people around the side of the building were. Anyway, go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say, like, out of all of the footage that they actually did pull into the J6 committee, like, if I had 14,000 hours of video, I could make it look like a zombie apocalypse. The fact that they took and selectively edited it to fit their narrative is right on. I mean, that's right on point, because you could take and any amount of footage like that and create a narrative. So having it just released that we can just watch it in entirety, it's going to create a completely different narrative, I have a feeling.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how this all goes. So anyway, we'll have more news on that. We're going to have a deeper conversation with Brandon for as part of his part of a redacted conversation that is coming up. All right, so I have my wrong notes here. I had the wrong day pulled up here in front of me.
Well,
so what we're gonna
that does it for us on YouTube for today. We will be back on YouTube tomorrow. If you'd like to come over, and we would like you to, join us on Rumble, because we are going to talk about numbers from the CDC and from the government of the United Kingdom and Australia, and compare their excess death rates. These are published from those sources, but we have found in the past, in our experience, that even publishing CDC or Pfizer data directly does not curry well with certain powers in big tech. So we're going to do this exclusively on Rumble. You know where our chat is. We've dropped the link in the chat. Come on over to Rumble. And if we're leaving you here on YouTube, we will see you tomorrow.
So the URL for you to join us, we have a whole channel on Rumble. Just go to rumble.com/redacted. Rumble.com/redacted. Come on over and join us right now on Rumble. Thanks to all of our YouTubers, though, tonight. We really appreciate it.